That annoying gas and bloating that you seem to develop pretty soon, most times after eating, is that just an annoyance? Or is that something you actually need to be worried about and taking action on? Well, today we're going to jump into this topic and I'm going to help you understand what's going on with that gas and bloating and ultimately where that can lead to and whether or not you need to take immediate action on that or you can delay. Is it an annoyance? Well, probably more than an annoyance here. So, what you're dealing with most likely, if you're having symptoms of gas and bloating that are popping up pretty quickly after a meal, if you're noticing that your bowel motility is altered, too fast, too slow, maybe you see your stool consistency's off, the chances that that's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth are significantly high. So what's happened is that you've accumulated an abundance of bacteria above what is considered an ideal level in your small intestine. So normally, when the numbers of bacteria should be reducing as we move from the stomach to the small intestine, ultimately what's beginning to happen here is we're seeing instead that those numbers are increasing. And as that begins to happen, there's some dysfunction that comes along with that because there should not be an overgrowth of bacteria in that area. Well, with that mindset, then, while you do experience this as an annoyance, this is far more than an annoyance. You need to have a much longer picture on this of what's going on. So let's talk about why this is more of an issue that needs to be dealt with fairly soon. Where does this all lead? Well, understand that when you start to have an accumulation of bacteria in an area where there shouldn't be an accumulation of bacteria, those bacteria are going to start to outcompete your bacteria, the bacteria you normally want there, those levels, and you, just in general, they're going to start outcompeting you for assimilation of resources. The bacteria are there. They have needs that they need to facilitate as well. They have energy that they want to produce. So they're literally going to start taking resources from the diet coming through the small intestine, and they're going to start pulling nutrients out of that. And instead of you getting those nutrients are instead going to the bacteria that have overgrown. Now, as this continues to occur, several things begin to happen, but one of which is that many times the byproducts of these microbes, of these bacteria, begin to overwhelm the system. They begin to proliferate and they start producing byproducts, or just as part of their natural life cycle, if they die off, there's going to be some byproducts from that die-off process. And when that happens, what's going to take place is that those are going to become triggers for your immune system, and your immune system begins to respond to that. It identifies that substance, whether it's the bacterial byproduct or a metabolite, and when it identifies that, it's going to secondarily start to begin to induce an inflammatory cascade. As the inflammatory cascade increases, that's when we see that this is not local to the gastrointestinal tract anymore. And this is ultimately how that little annoyance that you're experiencing after meals turns into a potential chronic problem for you that ultimately can come along with a named condition. So that can begin to result in thyroid dysfunction. It could begin to result in autoimmune conditions. We can see that there's going to be, for example, you can run into restless leg type syndrome or just restless leg syndrome as a byproduct of that. So there's definitely dysfunction and conditions that come along with this overgrowth of bacteria in your gut. So what do you make of this? Do you just ignore this annoyance and think, okay, well, it went away for a day or two or for a meal or two, maybe it's not that big of a deal? Well, what if it is a big deal? And that's really where you need to be thinking about this. If there's any frequency or consistency with this, if this is something that's happening on a routine nature, this is not just an annoyance for you. This is something you need to deal with. And that means that you need to figure out exactly what this nature of your overgrowth is. You need to figure out how you're going to develop an antimicrobial protocol with that. And then you also need to look at how are you going to prevent this from recurring again in the future. And keep in mind, right, those bacteria that were overgrowing, they were robbing you of your resources. So that means that there's a high probability that you've developed some deficiencies, nutrient deficiencies, as a byproduct of those not being available to you because they were rediverted and being utilized by the bacteria that are a part of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So there's a roadmap for you. There's a plan. If you're looking for ideas on maybe you want to try to tackle this yourself, then take a look at some of the information below and you'll see some resources that I have that can help you do that. If you feel like you need some additional guidance with this, also take a look at those resources and you can figure out how to get in touch with me and get some help on that as well. But don't look at this as just an annoyance. This is actually something that can manifest into chronic diseases. We even see this as a part of individuals that have diabetes, individuals that have Parkinson's disease. It's not uncommon in those disease states to see this SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So hopefully you find that helpful. Hopefully this will give you a different viewpoint on how to look at those symptoms that you're experiencing, if they are an annoyance to you, and where you need to go with those to deal with them. So with that all being said, until next time, I'll talk to you soon. I'm Dr. Arland Hill, and we'll see you in the near future.